A billionaire walks into a bank and asks to borrow $10 million. He has $12 million sitting in his account. The bank says yes immediately. He pays 4% interest on money he already has. You'd call that stupid. He calls it Tuesday. This isn't recklessness. It's not ego. It's a deliberate financial strategy that separates people who build wealth from people who just earn money. And the reason it works has nothing to do with what you were taught about debt. Let's break down the math they don't want you to understand. Here's the setup. You start a business. It's doing well. You need $500,000 to expand, open another location, buy inventory, hire a team, whatever. You have two options: use your own money or borrow it from a bank. Most people think the answer is obvious. Use your own money. No interest, no debt, no risk. Clean and simple. The rich do the opposite. They borrow every single time, even when they don't have to. Why? Because they're not thinking about the cost of the loan. They're thinking about the cost of using their own cash, and that cost is invisible to most people. Let's put numbers to it. You need $500,000 for your business. You have it sitting in your account. You could write a check today. But here's what that actually means. That $500,000, if left invested in a basic index fund averaging 10% annual returns, would grow to about $1.3 million in 10 years. But the moment you pull it out to fund your business, that growth stops. You've just sacrificed $800,000 in future wealth to avoid a loan payment. Now let's say you borrow that $500,000 instead. The bank charges you 6% interest. Over 10 years, you'll pay about $165,000 in interest. Sounds like a lot, except your original $500,000 is still invested, still compounding, still growing to $1.3 million. Do the math. You paid $165,000 to make $800,000. That's not debt, that's arbitrage. The wealthy don't see loans as bad. They see them as leverage, a tool to be in two places at once, growing wealth while building business. And the gap between those two numbers is where generational money gets made. But it gets better, or worse, depending on where you're sitting. Because that 6% interest you're paying, it's tax deductible. Business loan interest is an expense. It reduces your taxable income. So if you're paying $30,000 a year in interest and you're in the 30% tax bracket, you're saving about $9,000 in taxes, which means your real cost isn't 6%, it's closer to 4%. Now compare that to the 10% your invested money is making. You're borrowing at 4% to earn 10%. That's a 6% spread. Free money, and it's completely legal. The tax code is written to reward people who use debt strategically. It punishes people who play it safe with cash. You were told debt is dangerous. The system was designed to make debt profitable for people who understand it. Let's go deeper. Imagine you're worth $50 million. All of it is tied up in assets, stocks, real estate, a business. It's growing at 12% a year. You're getting richer while you sleep. But now you want to buy something. A house, a plane, another company, whatever. It costs $10 million. You have two moves. Option 1. Sell $10 million in assets, pay capital gains tax. At the federal level, that's 20%. In some states, add another 13%. You just lost $3.3 million to taxes. You now need to sell $13.3 million in assets to walk away with $10 million in cash. Option 2. Borrow $10 million using your assets as collateral. The bank charges you 3% interest because you're low risk. No taxes, no sale. Your assets keep growing at 12%. You're earning 9% on money that's technically borrowed. Which would you choose? This is called a securities-backed line of credit. It's how the ultra-wealthy buy things without ever selling anything. They live off loans, and because loans aren't income, they pay almost nothing in taxes. You're working 40 hours a week and paying 25% of your income to the IRS. They're borrowing against billions and paying zero. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed, just not for you. Now here's the part that sounds insane until you think about it. Rich people don't just borrow for business, they borrow to invest more. They take cheap debt and pour it into higher return opportunities. It's called leverage, and it's the most powerful wealth-building tool that nobody tells you about. Let's say you buy a rental property for $1 million. You put down 20%, so $200,000 of your own money. You borrow the other $800,000 at 5% interest. That property appreciates at 4% a year and generates $60,000 in annual rental income. Here's what just happened. You're earning returns on $1 million, but you only invested $200,000. Your return isn't 4%, it's closer to 30% on your actual cash. The bank gave you $800,000 to multiply your results. And if the property goes up in value by $100,000, you don't just make $100,000, you make $100,000 on a $200,000 investment. That's a 50% return, all because you used someone else's money. This is how people turn 6 figures into 8 figures in a decade, not by saving, by borrowing strategically and letting leverage do the heavy lifting. But let's be honest, this only works if you know what you're doing. Leverage is an amplifier. It makes wins bigger and losses catastrophic. Borrow to invest in something that fails, and you don't just lose your money, you lose your money plus interest, plus whatever collateral you put up. This is how people go bankrupt while looking successful on paper. The difference between the wealthy and everyone else isn't just access, it's education. They were taught how debt works. You were taught to fear it. They were taught to use banks as partners. You were taught to avoid them unless desperate. And here's the quiet part. Banks love lending to rich people. Low risk, high collateral, reliable income. The interest rate drops as your net worth rises. It's the reverse of how it should work. The people who need money least get the best deals. The people who need money most get payday loans at 400% interest. The system is rigged, but knowing how it's rigged is the first step to playing it differently. So here's the real question. If using debt intelligently is how wealth gets built, why isn't this taught in schools? Why do we grow up hearing that all debt is bad, that loans are traps, that borrowing is irresponsible? Because a financially literate population is a dangerous population. People who understand leverage don't stay in their lane. They don't work 40 years for a pension. They don't accept 0.4% savings account returns while other people's money grows. The system needs you to be afraid of debt, so you'll never use it as a tool. It needs you to think cash is safe, so your money loses value while someone else's grows. It needs you to believe that rich people are just luckier, smarter, more disciplined. They're not. They just learned a different set of rules. The only question left is whether you're ready to learn them too.